Jaxon Dart is officially the starter for the New York Giants. If you watched Russell Wilson play football last year, or the year before that, this is not a surprise at all. Okay, and I want to talk about this, not from the Giants are making the right or wrong decision. I just think that they've gone about the process completely wrong. I don't know if teams should start young quarterbacks right away or if they should sit them for a year or more. There's evidence for both. If you're like you drafted a guy in the first round, you should play him immediately. Then you're probably going to point to guys like Justin Herbert, C.J. Stroud, and Jaden Daniels. You're like, see, they figured it out immediately. And then if you're against that, then you're going to point at like Peyton Manning, who set the NFL record for interceptions thrown in a season in his rookie year. You're going to point to guys like Anthony Richardson, who played immediately, and now he's backing up Daniel Jones. Speaking of Daniel Jones, you're going to point to him and Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold and say they played immediately, and they had to leave the team that drafted them before they became good at football. And then you're going to have other people who are going to say, no, guys need to sit for a year. And they're just going to point at like Patrick Mahomes, one of the best quarterbacks in the history of football. And they're going to point to Tom Brady as if, it was even on the table for him to start immediately. And then other guys are going to be like, well, what about Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers? They sat for more than a year. They both sat for 3 years. And look how that's turned out. Clearly, there is no surefire way to develop quarterbacks in the NFL. If there was, then everyone would do the exact same thing. So what I think teams need to do is they need to commit to a plan and not waver from it. Like they should be able to look down the line and know what's going to happen and roll with it. And what I mean when I say that they need to look down the line and know what's going to happen, this is kind of what I mean. So my wife is a school teacher, and we were at dinner last night. And I asked her this question. I said, if you had two students walk in together on the first day of school, and they're chatting it up, and they're clearly friends, would you sit them by each other? And she obviously said no, because she can see down the line that that's going to be problematic for both of them in terms of their ability to pay attention in class. They're going to talk, and then in addition to that, it's going to impact the learning of everyone else around them because they're going to be distracting. That is what I mean when I say that these coaches and general managers need to look down the line and see what's going to happen. Brian Daboll and the Giants knew that Jaxon Dart was going to start at some point during the season because they've seen Russell Wilson play football the last 3 years. And they've seen Jameis Winston throw a bunch of picks in his career. I love Jameis Winston. I know a lot of people do. Not as high on Russell Wilson. But there's a reason why both of those guys have bounced around the NFL. Right? Like the Giants and Brian Daboll should have known they were not going to win games with them this year. They should have known that. And Jaxon Dart being named the starter less than a month into the season is the most obvious thing to ever happen in the NFL. Everyone saw this coming. Even people who aren't smart when it comes to talking football. Me. I'm talking about myself, okay? They should have started him from the beginning because everyone knew that we were going to end up here. And I'm sorry. I just find it very hard to believe that Jaxon Dart is all of a sudden the epitome of knowledge of knowing how to play quarterback in the NFL after sitting behind Russell Wilson for 3 weeks. Like, come on now. And so they either should have fully committed to starting him from the beginning, or they should have fully committed to not playing him. Like, if the Giants really think that Jaxon Dart needs to sit for a year, then run Jameis Winston out there. If you don't like how Russell Wilson is playing right now, you have to fully commit one way or the other. Like I said, there's not a guaranteed way to develop a young quarterback because they're all different. These NFL teams just need to stick to whatever their plan is. And that's a really easy thing for me to say, but Brian Daboll is trying to save his job. That's the reality of it. The general manager of the Giants is trying to keep his job. So here's my thing. There's two ways for those guys to keep their jobs this year. Option one was to make the playoffs with Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston as your quarterback. Option two was to insert Jaxon Dart and and have him be very impressive. And then you can go to the owner and say, hey, look, I get it, right? We haven't been winning football games. But this Jaxon Dart kid, like, he's getting it. And I think if you give me one more year, then we can make the playoffs. Look at these numbers. Look at how he progressed throughout the start of the season. And they could have started that part of their plan from week one. But now what you've done is you've exposed that the rest of your roster isn't very good, obviously with the exceptions of guys like Andrew Thomas, the left tackle, Malik Neighbors out wide. Obviously, the front seven is nasty, but offensively, they clearly need some work. Jaxon Dart should have been the starter from the jump. I don't like it when these NFL teams waver with how they want to bring along a young quarterback.